Jai Gurudev, and thank you for joining us today. Today, again, we have with us an art weaving expert and an officer of the Vedic Dharma Sansthan. Today, we are going to discuss about the talk "You and the Universe." So, what did Gurudev mean when he said "You and the Universe are one"? Jai Gurudev, thank you for joining us today. So, Gurudev began the session with a profound statement: "You and the universe are not separate." He explained that the human being is not an isolated entity but an integral part of the cosmic design. The same five fundamental elements that constitute the vast universe, like earth, which is Prithvi, water or Jala, fire or the Agni, air, the Vayu, and the space or the Akasha, also make up our own body. Beyond these lies the mind, intellect, memory, ego, and consciousness, extending the total to 36 elements, the tattvas mentioned in the scriptures. In Vedic cosmology, the Pancha Mahabhutas, the five great elements, are the foundation, while subtle layers like Manas, Buddhi, and Chitta link the individual or the Jiva with the universe or the Brahmanda. Gurudev reminds us that spiritual growth begins when we see ourselves as reflections of the cosmos. Meditation helps us dissolve the false sense of separation and realize that we are microcosms of the macrocosm. In this realization, compassion, peace, and balance naturally arise. For when we understand our unity with the universe, harmony flows effortlessly. Now, Gurudev mentioned 36 elements in the universe. Can you explain their significance? Yes, Gurudev, the 36 elements as described by Gurudev have deep roots in the Shaiva and Sankhya philosophies. They begin from the grosses, the earth, and ascend through subtler layers of existence, ending with Shiva Tattva, the pure consciousness itself, with the 36th element. These tattvas represent the unfolding of creation from matter to mind to spirit. Gurudev beautifully simplified this complex philosophy. He said, imagine the universe as layers of subtlety. The earth element gives stability, water gives fluidity, fire gives transformation, air gives movement, and the sky gives vastness. Then comes mind, which perceives, intellect, which discriminates, and memory, which stores, and ego, which identifies. These together create the play of life. Above all, consciousness is the silent witness, the 36th element, or the Shiva Tattva, the ultimate reality. When we meditate, we journey backward from the gross to the subtle, returning home to that pure consciousness. Gurudev calls it Hima, the vast unmanifest field of all possibilities. It is in this field that the universe and we both exist as one continuum. Now, how are the three bodies, the gross, the subtle, and the causal, connected to these elements? Gurudev explained that just as the universe has multiple layers, so does the individual. The gross body or the Shula Sharira is made of physical matter. The five gross elements, the subtle body or the Sukshma Sharira, consists of mind, intellect, memory, ego, and prana or the life force. The causal body or the Karan Sharira is the deepest layer, untouched, eternal, and the source of all life and energy. The subtle body acts as the bridge between the physical and the causal. When Gurudev said the gross body is a projection of the subtle body, he echoed an ancient truth from the Upanishads. Our physical form is merely the manifestation of subtler vibrations. The causal body, however, remains untainted. It carries no karma, only potential. When we die, the physical dissolves into the elements, the subtle carries impressions of samskaras, and the causal remains pure. Gurudev emphasized meditation as a process through which awareness expands beyond the physical to experience the subtle and eventually the blissful causal self, the true essence of life. Now, Gurudev said that the causal body is untouched by karma. What does that mean? Jayadav, karma operates in the field of action, the physical and the subtle planes. The causal body, known as the Anandamaya Kosha or the Karan Sharira, exists between the realm of cause and effect. It is pure consciousness, untouched by the dualities of good or bad. Gurudev explained it beautifully. When you realize your causal nature, karma loses its grip. In meditation, as the mind transcends activity, we touch that the field of silence where impressions dissolve. This is why deep meditation or Sahat Samadhi can free us from the karmic cycles. While the subtle body carries impressions, the desires, the fears, and the tendencies that shape our next birth, the causal body remains the eternal witness. It is the same energy that animates the universe. Understanding this helps us live lightly, without guilt or burden, as Gurudev says. Don't identify with your karma. You are not what you did. You are that pure consciousness where no karma sticks. So, what happens to the subtle and causal bodies when one dies? Gurudev explained that at death, the gross body returns to the five elements. The subtle body, carrying all impressions, the vasanas, and karmic seeds, moves on to find another form based on those tendencies. The causal body, being eternal, simply remains as a silent observer. This aligns with Vedic teachings Jivo Brahmaiva na Paraha. The soul is none other than Brahman. The causal body never dies, it is beyond time and space. Gurudev said that just as air carries fragments, the subtle body carries impressions to the next birth. When we meditate deeply, we cleanse these impressions, lighting the subtle body. This is why Gurudev encourages daily sadhana, pranayama, sudarshan kriya, and meditation. They purify the subtle body and help the individual remain established in the causal blissful self. Ultimately, liberation or moksha is when even the subtle dissolves and the individual merges back into the universal consciousness. Now, Gurudev mentioned that the subtle body is the bridge between the gross and causal. How can one strengthen this bridge? Jayadav Gurudev explained that our subtle body connects our physical experiences with our innermost consciousness. When this bridge is strong, the life flows effortlessly. The strength of this bridge depends on the purity of prana, or the life force energy, and the clarity of the mind through pranayama, sudarshan kriya, and meditation. The subtle body becomes radiant and aligned with nature. Negative emotions, greed, anger, and jealousy cloud the subtle body just as dust clouds a mirror. Now, in the Vedic Dharma Sansthan, this process is called Antakarana Shuddhi, purification of the inner instrument. Rituals, homas, and the mantra japa and the seva all help strengthen this inner connection. Gurudev often says your energy precedes your action. When the subtle body vibrates with positivity, even the gross body becomes healthy and the causal body becomes accessible in meditation. Thus, the bridge between the seen and the unseen realms is sustained through discipline, devotion, and awareness. Now, Gurudev said the universe exists in you. What is the deeper implication of that? The statement reflects one of the highest truths of the Upanishads, Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmanya, meaning as is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. The structure of the human being mirrors the structure of the universe. Every cosmic function, creation, sustenance, and dissolution happens within us every moment through thought, breath, and awareness. Gurudev made this concept experiential. He said, when you close your eyes and become still, you can feel the space of the universe within you. During meditation, the boundaries between the self and the cosmos dissolve. The pulse of your breath matches the rhythm of the universe. This realization brings humility and vastness. Gurudev often laughs and says, you think you are just a body, but you are the entire sky walking in form. This vision changes how we live. We stop chasing smallness and begin celebrating vastness, recognizing that the universe lives through us, makes every breath sacred and every action divine. How can meditation help us experience oneness with the universe? The Gurudev always emphasizes that meditation is not effort, but relaxation into one's true nature. When the mind becomes quiet, the barriers between me and the universe disappear. We begin to feel that the same consciousness that moves the stars also beats within our heart. From the Vedic standpoint, this experience is called samadhi, total absorption. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali describe it as a state where the seer, the seen, and the process of seeing become one. Gurudev's technique of Sahat Samadhi leads the practitioner gently toward the state. As thought settles, awareness expands beyond the body and mind, touching the causal level of existence. In that silence, you realize that there was never a separation. Meditation thus becomes not an escape from the world, but a reunion with the universe. Gurudev beautifully says, when you meditate, the universe meditates with you. It is the highest expression of unity. Now, Gurudev spoke about how impressions travel with the subtle body. What are these impressions? Gurudev, in Sanskrit, these impressions are called samskaras or vasanas, subtle imprints left by past actions, emotions, and desires. They are stored in the subtle body and shape our tendencies, attractions, and aversions in this and future lives. Gurudev often illustrates this with simplicity. Every experience you resist or cling to leaves a mark on your subtle body. These impressions are like seeds that sprout as karma through Sudarshan Kriya and meditation. The energy of these impressions is released, allowing us to live freely in the present. Gurudev reminds us, you are not your past. Every breath gives you a chance to start anew. The subtle body thus becomes lighter, more transparent, and aligned with the higher cosmic rhythm. Cleansing these impressions through spiritual practices like sadhana, selfless service, or seva, and wisdom or jnana is essential for liberation. In essence, meditation is the process of washing the subtle body of the dust of lifetimes. Now, Gurudev said that at death, the gross body dissolves, but the subtle body carries forward impressions. Can this process be understood scientifically? Absolutely. Gurudev has often pointed out that the ancient wisdom and modern science are not opposed. The subtle body can be compared to an energy field, an electromagnetic pattern that retains memory even when the physical body ceases. Quantum physics too suggests that energy is never destroyed, it only transforms. In Vedic philosophy, this is called Purarjanma or the rebirth. The impressions stored in the subtle body act like software, and the new body becomes the hardware through which the program runs. So Gurudev says, death is just taking off one garment and wearing another. The causal body remains untouched. It is the same divine consciousness that animates all beings. The scientific and spiritual understanding reduces fear of death and inspires responsible living. When we live with awareness that the subtle body gathers purity instead of burden, this life becomes not a cycle of repetition but a spiral of evolution toward enlightenment. Now, Gurudev described the universe as Hima, the vast and unknown. What does this word signify? The word Hima in Sanskrit has multiple layers of meaning. It denotes something pure, vast, and shining like the snow of the Himalayas or the light of pure awareness. Gurudev used the term metaphorically to describe the all encompassing field of consciousness from which everything arises and into which everything dissolves. Gurudev often uses poetic language to make metaphysical ideas accessible. When he said, the universe is known as Hima, he meant that the field of existence is both infinite and yet knowable through inner silence. Just as the Himalayas stand as a bridge between earth and sky, the Hima represents the bridge between matter and consciousness. In deep meditation, one experiences expanse, still luminous and alive. Gurudev reminds us that Hima is not somewhere outside, it is the quiet vastness within. When the chatter of the mind ceases, we enter that same sacred field of awareness. Now, how do the five elements influence our physical and emotional health as per Gurudev's talk? Gurudev taught that imbalance in the five elements directly reflects in our physical and mental well-being. Too much earth element can cause heaviness and lethargy. Excess fire brings anger or acidity. Disturbed air causes anxiety. Through pranayama, Ayurveda, and right diet, we can restore elemental harmony. Vedic rituals like Panchopachara Puja or Agnihotra are designed to balance these cosmic elements within us. When we chant mantras or light a lamp, we invoke elemental harmony. Gurudev integrates this wisdom with the modern living through breathing practices and meditation. We cleanse the inner elements. He often says the body is the earth, the mind is the water, and emotions are the fire. Breath is the air, and the self is the space. When all these are in balance, we radiate peace and vitality. The spiritual practice is not an escape but a holistic science of elemental balance. Now, Gurudev mentioned that the gross body is a projection of the subtle body. How can we understand this practically? Gurudev said that whatever happens in the subtle body reflects in the gross body. This means that our thoughts, emotions, and energy patterns influence our health and behavior. If the subtle body is filled with peace, gratitude, and clarity, the gross body naturally radiates health and vitality. If it is cluttered with anger, fear, or guilt, it manifests as physical tension or disease. The Vedas affirm the same truth. Yatha manas tatha shariram, as the mind, so the body. The subtle body is like software and the gross body is the hardware. Gurudev says practices such as Sudarshan Kriya, Padma Sadhana, and Sahat Samadhi meditation refine the subtle energies leading to visible physical transformation. In Vedic philosophy, healing begins not with medicine alone but with purification of the subtle field through mantra, breath, and awareness. Gurudev bridges this ancient truth with modern science by reminding us that energy precedes matter. When the subtle body vibrates in harmony, the gross body naturally follows that rhythm. Now, Gurudev spoke about mind, intellect, memory, and ego as distinct layers. How do they interact? According to Vedic thought, these four, the Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahamkara, form the Antakarana, or the inner instrument. The mind receives sensory input, the intellect discriminates, the memory stores, and the ego identifies. When these four work in harmony, awareness flows smoothly. Gurudev described it so simply. The mind is like the screen, the intellect is the filter, the memory is the storehouse, and the ego says mind. In spiritual practice, we train the intellect to observe without judgment, allowing the mind to remain calm. When the ego becomes rigid, suffering begins. Meditation relaxes the ego, making it transparent. Gurudev says, when the ego becomes porous, joy flows. This understanding is central to inner growth. It teaches us that our conflicts are not external but arise from disharmony within these inner layers. Through knowledge, sadhana, and grace, the four become aligned and the light of consciousness shines unobstructed. Now, what is the role of intellect or buddhi in spiritual progress according to Gurudev? Gurudev beautifully says a sharp intellect with a soft heart makes life successful. The intellect's role is to discern, not to doubt everything, but to see clearly. A mature intellect distinguishes between what uplifts and what depletes one's energy. It's like the steering wheel of a car. It guides direction, but should not control emotion entirely. In Vedic Dharma, Buddhi is considered divine when purified by selflessness and devotion. An unrefined intellect leads to arrogance, a refined one becomes a tool for liberation. Gurudev teaches Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge which awakens discrimination to reflection and inquiry, or the Vichara he often says. Doubt the doubt, not the self. When intellect becomes clear through meditation, it is no longer questions love or divinity. It rests in wisdom. Thus, Buddhi transforms from an analytical instrument into an intuitive one, bringing logic and faith and bridging. Now, Gurudev often speaks of memory or the chitta. How does memory influence our spiritual journey? Now, the memory is not merely remembrance of events, it's the storehouse of impressions or samskaras accumulated over lifetimes. These impressions influence behavior, preferences, and tendencies. If the memory is cluttered, the mind becomes restless. Gurudev explained this subtly. Your memory is like a lake. When the water is disturbed, you see distorted reflections. Through meditation, the ripple settles, and true knowledge reflects clearly. Spiritual practices help us clean this memory bank so that past trauma and conditioning don't cloud perception. In the Vedic sense, this purification is Chitta Shuddhi Gurudev's techniques, especially Sudarshan Kriya release emotional residue stored in cellular memory. When memory becomes pure, awareness remains in the present moment. That is why Gurudev says, when you drop the past, you meet infinity. A clean memory is the gateway to enlightenment. Now, the ego or the ahamkara seems to cause most human suffering. What was Gurudev's perspective on it? Gurudev explained that ego is necessary for functioning. It gives identity and helps navigate the world. The problem begins when we over identify with it. He said ego is like shoes. Wear them when needed, but don't sleep with them. When ego becomes rigid, separates us from others and from our true nature. The Vedic Shastras also recognize the ego as one of the wheels over consciousness. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna advises Arjuna to act without attachment to ego or outcome. Gurdev's approach is experiential. In deep meditation, one feels the disappearance of the I. In that moment, all anxiety vanishes. When we come out, the ego is softened, more fluid, more loving. He teaches humility as the strength of the wise, not weakness. True surrender, Gurudev says, is not losing individuality, but discovering universality, realizing that the small I is a part of the infinite I. Now, Gurudev said that the causal body is the source of life and energy. How can one experience it directly? Neither the causal body, the Karan Sharira, is not something visible or tangible. It is experienced in deep meditation or samadhi as pure bliss and awareness. It's the field from which life arises, the untouched, eternal, luminous. Gurudev often guides participants into this true silence retreat. He says when all desires drop, the mind becomes transparent and the causal body shines forth. This is the stage where there is no doing, only being. It's the stillness behind all movement. Ancient texts call it Anandamaya Kosha. The sheath of bliss, Gurudev's presence itself radiates this causal energy. Being around him, one feels centered and energized without reason. The more one dives into meditation, the more frequently this causal awareness flows in daily life. Effortless joy, compassion without effort, and rest without sleep. Experiencing the causal body is testing and tasting immortality while living. Now, Gurudev often says, You are energy. What does that mean in the context of the three bodies? Gurudev teaches that what we call life is simply energy expressing through three sheets of physical, subtle, and causal. Just as electricity expresses differently through a bulb or a fan, consciousness expresses through the body and mind. The source is the same pure energy, pure consciousness. In Vedic Dharma, this energy is known as Prana Shakti. It's the force that animates the universe and the individual. Like Gurudev says, you don't have energy, you are energy. The gross body manifests this energy as movement and action, the subtle body as thought and emotion, and the causal as pure existence. When we are tired or stressed, our energy is low. When connected to the source through meditation, we feel boundless vitality. Understanding ourselves as energy changes how we relate to the world. We begin to nurture, not exploit. We begin to serve, not possess. The realization I am energy is the bridge to I am the universe. Now, Gurudev said that the subtle body carries karma. How can we cleanse it? In Vedic tradition, karma is a subtle residue of actions performed with attachment. It adheres to the subtle body as impressions. These can be lightened or erased through yajna or rituals and homas, and the seva or selfless service in bhakti or devotion, and dhyana or meditation. Gurudev gives us practical tools for karmic cleansing. Sudarshan Kriya oxygenates and purifies the system, burning old patterns at an energetic level. Seva transforms self centered tendencies into compassion. Satsang raises vibration and rewires memory. Gurudev says karma is like dust on your mirror. Your practices are the cloth that wipes it clean. When we live with awareness, we stop creating new karmas. In his words, wisdom burns karma. The subtle body becomes lighter, more radiant, and aligned with the causal field. The state is not achieved through effort alone, but through grace. When intention meets surrender, the law of karma yields in the law of love. Now, Gurudev often says life is a play of energy and consciousness. How does this connect to the 36 elements he spoke about? Jagadav Gurudev revealed that 36 elements from the physical earth element to the subtlest consciousness represent a continuum of energy transforming into intelligence. He said, life is a movement of consciousness through these elements. Consciousness manifests as energy and energy condenses as matter. It's all one spectrum, only the degree of subtlety differs. In Shaiva Agama and Sankhya philosophy, creation unfolds through these tattvas, a cascade from the subtlest of the Shiva tattva to the grossest of the Prithvi tattva. Gurudev simplifies this ancient framework, showing how each human experience arises from the interplay of these elements. For example, love is the harmony of water and space, anger is the distortion of fire, restlessness the imbalance of air. Understanding this helps us live consciously, adjusting breath, food, and thoughts to maintain elemental balance. Gurudev's wisdom turns cosmic principles into daily guidance. He reminds us that the entire universe is alive within us, and through awareness, we can realign our personal energy with the universal rhythm. Now, Gurudev spoke about rebirth as a subtle body's continuation. How does one transcend the cycle of birth and death? Jagadav, in Vedic Dharma, rebirth occurs until all karmas are exhausted and desires are resolved. Liberation or moksha comes when one realizes oneness as oneself as a timeless witness beyond birth and death. Gurudev says death is not an end, it is a comma in the sentence of existence. He guides seekers toward moksha not through renunciation but awareness. By purifying the subtle body, dissolving impressions, and resting in the causal self, one goes beyond the cycle. In meditation, Gurudev often says, the one who knows death has already transcended it. When the sense of individuality merges into the infinite, rebirth ceases because there is no longer a separate I to be born and reborn. Yet, out of compassion, realized beings may take form again to serve humanity, not due to karma, but out of grace. Liberation, therefore, is not escape but expansion, being everywhere, forever free. Now, Gurudev often connects science and spirituality. How can modern physics relate to the 36 elements or the three bodies? Gurudev frequently points out that quantum physics and Vedanta are converging. Science describes matter as energy vibrating at different frequencies, while spirituality describes the same through the concept of tattvas. Both speak of one unified field underlying all creation. The gross, subtle, and causal bodies correspond respectively to one physical, energetic, and informational dimensions recognized in modern physics. Gurudev says consciousness is the scientist and the subject. The observer effect in quantum theory, where observation changes reality, echoes the ancient truth that consciousness shapes experiences. Gurudev bridges this gap by showing that meditation is the experiment through which one observes the field of consciousness directly. He often says when science explores the outer world and spirituality explores the inner, both meet and wonder. The more deeply we meditate, the more we understand the interconnectedness that physicists describe mathematically. It's the same truth experienced subjectively and objectively. Now, what is the relationship between karma and free will as explained by Gurudev? The Vedas describe human life as a mixture of prarabdha or the past karma, the sanchita or the accumulated karma, and triyamana or the present actions. We cannot change the seed that has sprouted, but we can choose how to respond. Gurudev says, you cannot stop rain, but you can carry an umbrella. Free will operates in awareness. When consciousness expands, choice expands. A narrow mind feels bound by destiny. An awakened one creates a destiny to right action. Gurudev explains that karma is not punishment but learning. Each situation brings an opportunity to rise above reaction through meditation. Intellect becomes clear, emotions stabilize, and actions align with dharma. In that state, even karmic challenges become steps toward freedom. As Gurudev puts it, when awareness dawns, destiny smiles. The highest freedom is realizing that the doer, the deed, and the result are all expressions of the same consciousness. Now, Gurudev emphasized that the causal body remains untouched even through lifetimes. Why is this realization transformative? Because it ends fear. Gurudev said, the real you never dies, the causal body or the pure consciousness is unchanging through time, untouched by pleasure or pain. Recognizing this truth dissolves anxiety, guilt, and grief. One sees life as a passing movie on the screen of eternity. In Vedic Darshana, this awareness is called Atmagyana or the self knowledge. When one identifies with the body, there is limitation. When one identifies with consciousness, there is liberation. Gurudev's meditative guidance helps seekers experience this directly, not intellectually. He says, you don't have to become divine, you already are. Realizing the untouched causal self makes life lighter. Challenges lose their sting, relationships gain compassion, and service becomes effortless. This understanding transforms life from a struggle into a celebration of existence. Now, how does the universe communicate with us as per Gurudev's vision? Jayavdev, the universe is not inert, it is conscious. The Vedas declare Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman, consciousness itself. Gurudev says the universe speaks in silence, symbols, and synchronicities. When our mind is still weak and hear it through meditation and intuition, one begins to perceive these as subtle messages, a timely encounter, a spontaneous idea, a recurring pattern. Gurudev calls this the language of nature in silence programs. He encourages participants to observe how thoughts, dreams, and outer events start aligning. He explains that this happens because consciousness is one continuum. When our vibration becomes refined, the universe mirrors our inner state. He often laughs. You just have to tune your radio to the right frequency. The universe is always communicating. Our job is to become silent enough to listen. Now, Gurudev spoke about the sky of consciousness. What is the sky? Yes, Gurudev uses the metaphor of sky or the akasha to describe consciousness, vast, unbound, and ever present. Just as clouds come and go, but don't stay in the sky, thoughts and emotions arise and pass without touching the self. Meditation helps us realize this truth. Experiential in Vedic cosmology, akasha is both an element and a symbol, the subtlest field in which all elements exist. Gurudev says, you are that sky, not the storm within it. The more we identify with this vastness, the freer we become from dualities. Anger, sadness, and joy appear as clouds. We watch them without losing our space. The sky of consciousness is that eternal witness inside us. Realizing this transforms how we respond to life. Instead of reacting, we reflect, and from reflection arises compassion. Gurudev's teachings invite everyone to live like the sky, open, vast, and untouched. Now, Gurudev often said your breath is the link between body and mind. How does this relate to the three bodies? In Vedic understanding, prana is the bridge between the gross and the subtle. Breath carries the life force that animates both body and mind. When the prana is smooth, emotions and thoughts are balanced. When disturbed, both suffer. Gurudev's Sudarshan Kriya is a science of harmonizing prana. Through rhythmic breathing, it connects the physical body to the subtle and causal layers. He says breath is the remote control of the mind. When you regulate breath, you influence emotions. When emotions calm, the subtle body shines. In deep meditation, breath naturally slows. This is when awareness shifts to the causal body. Thus, the journey from gross to subtle to causal begins with breath. Gurudev beautifully puts it that through your breath, you can travel from matter to infinity. Now, how can one live the knowledge of you and the universe in daily life? Gurudev insists that spirituality must be lived, not discussed. He says, meditate in the morning, act in the world, and rest in the evening, knowing all belongs to the universe. Practicing awareness in small things, eating, speaking, or listening, keeps us connected to the cosmic flow. Vedic life integrates spirituality into action through Nitya Karma or the daily duty, Sandhya Vandanam or the reflection, and the Seva or selfless service. Gurudev modernizes these. Seva becomes selfless contribution, satsang becomes joy in community, and sadhana becomes inner silence. When we see the divine in everyone, life becomes worship. Gurudev reminds us that every breath we take is the universe breathing through us. Living this truth brings humility, grace, and fulfillment. The art of living, he says, is not renunciation but participation with awareness. Now, Gurudev mentioned that the subtle body leaves the physical at death. Can one perceive this transition consciously? Yes, advanced yogis and meditators can witness the process of separation consciously. The Vedas and Garud Purana describe it as the prana withdrawing through specific energy centers. Gurudev said that for the enlightened, the death is merely a change of costume. He explained that awareness does not end, it only shifts dimensions. In deep meditation, one can experience temporary disidentification from the body, a glimpse of death without dying. Gurudev calls this dying before death where fear vanishes entirely. Such awareness comes through years of sadhana, humility, and surrender. For an ordinary person, meditation brings glimpse of this freedom. For a realized one, it is a permanent state. Gurudev often smiles and says, "You are not going to die, you will just drop your name and form." When this truth dawns, life becomes fearless and full. Now, how does Gurudev connect the 36 elements with human emotions and experiences? Jagadav Gurudev says that every emotion we experience is rooted in the interaction of the 36 elements within us. When the water element dominates, we feel compassion and fluidity. When the fire element rises, we feel passion or anger. When air becomes excessive, restlessness appears. When earth dominates, we feel grounded but sometimes heavy. The space or sky element provides expansiveness, a feeling of freedom and creativity. Our spiritual practices help balance these inner elements so that emotions flow harmoniously. The Vedas and Shaiva Agamas also describe the universe and the body as mirrors. Emotions are simply the ripples of these tattvas in motions. Gurudev's teachings on Sudarshan Kriya directly relates to this. Rhythmic breathing harmonizes the flow of prana among the elements. When we breathe consciously, we regulate the internal climate of the mind. Thus, yoga and pranayama are not just exercises but profound cosmic alignments. When our internal universe is in balance, we automatically live in tune with the external universe, and emotions become expressions of grace rather than turbulence. Now, why does Gurudev emphasize understanding both the gross and subtle bodies for spiritual growth? The gross and subtle bodies represent two dimensions of existence, the seen and the unseen. Gurudev teaches that ignoring the subtle while focusing only on the physical leads to imbalance. When we acknowledge the subtle mind, intellect, prana, we begin to truly understand the roots of our health, happiness, and behavior. Gurudev often says, "Your thoughts are the blueprints, your body is the building." The gross body is merely the manifestation of the patterns and vibrations in the subtle body. When one practices pranayama or meditation, those subtle vibrations are purified, leading to healing at the physical level. Understanding the subtle body allows us to correct problems before they manifest physically. It's like tending to the roots of a tree rather than painting the leaves. The more awareness we bring to the subtle, the more effortless our outer life becomes. Gurudev beautifully bridges ancient wisdom, Vedic wisdom, with modern understanding, making spirituality not abstract but directly experiential. How can one experience the causal body in daily life according to Gurudev? Gurudev explains that the causal body or the Karan Sharira is not experienced through doing, but through being in deep meditation or in moments of total silence. When the mind stops chasing thoughts, one touches the field of causality, the source from which all experiences arise. It's a moment of vast stillness where there is no desire, no judgment, only awareness. The causal body is known in the scriptures as the Anandamaya Kosha, the sheath or bliss. It cannot be seen or touched but can be known through inner stillness. Gurudev says that when the intellect relaxes and the breath becomes subtle, one slips into the causal layer. Naturally, in that state, one doesn't analyze or compare, one simply witnesses. This experience dissolves deep impressions or samskaras. The more we connect to this state, the lighter and freer we become. In daily life, Gurudev advises cultivating moments of quiet reflection, gratitude, and awareness that they serve as doorways to touch the causal body, even amidst the worldly activities. Now, Gurudev mentioned that the subtle body carries impressions. What are these impressions and how do they affect us? Jagadev, in Sanskrit, these impressions are called samskaras, the residual imprints left by our actions, emotions, and thoughts. Every experience we undergo creates a vibration in the subtle body. When left unresolved, they shape our habits, likes, dislikes, and even our destiny. Gurudev says, "You are not just your mind, you are the sum of your impressions." These impressions influence how we respond to life. For example, fear, anger, or attachment are not random emotions, they are echoes of past experiences stored in the subtle body. Through meditation and Sudarshan Kriya, We dissolve these vibrations. Gurudev often gives the analogy of a mirror covered in dust. The impressions are the dust, and meditation cleanses it, allowing our inner light to shine. Once these impressions are cleared, spontaneity, creativity, and joy becomes natural. The subtle body then vibrates in tune with the divine rhythm, the same rhythm that moves the cosmos. How does rebirth occur according to Gurudev's explanations of the three bodies? Gurudev explains that during death, the gross body dissolves into the five elements earth, water, fire, air, and space. The subtle body, which carries impressions, karma, and tendencies, continues its journey to find another suitable physical form. The causal body remains untouched. It is eternal consciousness. Now, this understanding mirrors the Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna says, just as a person changes worn out clothes, the soul takes on new bodies. Gurudev clarifies that rebirth is not a punishment but a continuation of learning. The impressions that remain unfulfilled find expression in a new life until the being attains realization. Through meditation and seva, the load of impressions reduces and the subtle body becomes lighter. Eventually, when awareness fully merges with the causal, the pure consciousness, the cycle of birth and death ends. Gurudev says that freedom is not somewhere else, it is realizing now that you were never bound. Now, how does meditation help bridge the gap between the subtle and causal bodies according to Gurudev? The Gurudev often describes meditation as the journey from sound to silence, from movement to stillness. In this journey, awareness shifts from the restless mind of the subtle body into the infinite peace of the causal body. The subtle body, filled with thoughts and emotions, acts like turbulent water. Meditation stills that turbulence. When the mind settles, we automatically experience the causal, our deepest layer of existence. This is why, in the Vedic tradition, meditation is considered the direct means to realize the self or the Atma Sakshatkar. Gurudev's teachings make this practical. When we meditate daily, we refine our subtle body by releasing impressions and clearing disturbances in prana flow. Once this purification happens, consciousness naturally gravitates toward its source, the causal body. Gurudev says you don't need to find peace. Peace is your nature. You only need to remove the noise that hides it. Through consistent sadhana, this bridge becomes strong, and the practitioner experiences deep rest, bliss, and an effortless connection with the divine. Now, Gurudev spoke about Hima as the vast field of all existence. What does this concept signify? The word Hima and the term Hima, as used by Gurudev, refers to the vast unmanifest field that underlies all creation, the eternal substratum of the universe. In Vedic terms, this aligns with Brahman, the infinite consciousness from which all tattvas arise. It is the silent backdrop on which the play of creation unfolds. Gurudev likened Hima to a boundless ocean, calm, still, and full of potential. The waves are thoughts, emotions, and actions come and go, but the ocean remains unchanged. When one realizes that they are that ocean and not the waves, suffering ceases. Hima represents the 36th and the subtlest element, the Shiva Tattva, pure consciousness, the womb of existence. Gurudev's word reminds us that this infinite presence is not somewhere far away, it is within every breath, every atom. Through awareness, we rediscover this vastness and start living with expansion, compassion, and fearlessness. For how can one fear anything when they realize they are the universe itself? Now, how does Gurudev's teaching reconcile modern science with the ancient Vedic wisdom? Yes, Gurudev often says science and spirituality are two sides of the same coin. One studies creation, the other studies the creator. He bridges the two by pointing out that both are based on observation, experimentation, and realization. Modern physics speaks of quantum fields and interconnectedness, while the Vedas spoke of Brahman, the one consciousness pervading all. From a Vedic perspective, Gurudev's explanation of the 36 elements matches what modern science calls the different states of matter and energy, the subtle layers of mind, intellect, memory, parallel, what neuroscientists call neural patterns or consciousness fields. Gurudev often encourages scientists to meditate, saying that inner silence enhances clarity and creativity. He reminds us that while science explores the how, spirituality explores the why. When the two meet, wisdom becomes complete. At the Art of Living International Center, many research studies have confirmed that meditation changes brainwave patterns and emotional stability, validating that what rishis realized thousands of years ago. Thus, Gurudev's teachings harmonize the logic of science with the depth of spirituality. Now, what does Gurudev mean by saying the gross body is a projection of the subtle body? The Vedas teach that the physical form or the Sthula Sharira emerges from subtler vibrations of prana and mind. Gurudev says that our body is like an image projected on a screen. The projector is a subtle body. Every cell and organ reflects the quality of our pranic and emotional state. Hence, healing begins from within. Gurudev illustrates this with the example of a movie reel. If there is a scratch on the film, the picture on the screen gets distorted. Similarly, when there is disturbance in the subtle body, the stress, anger, or fear, the physical body shows symptoms through Sudarshan Kriya and meditation. We cleanse the subtle layer, automatically improving physical health. Gurudev often says, don't fight the body, purify the energy. Once the subtle vibrations are harmonized, the gross projection becomes vibrant, healthy, and full of vitality. This understanding transforms their approach to wellness from merely treating symptoms to nurturing the source, the subtle field of consciousness. How can awareness of these three bodies transform daily living? The Gurudev's teaching is deeply practical. Awareness of the gross, subtle, and causal bodies helps us respond to life instead of reacting. When anger arises, we recognize it as movement in the subtle body, not as our true self. When tiredness comes, we know it belongs to the gross body, not the eternal consciousness. This awareness creates freedom. In Vedic practices, such awareness is called Sakshi Bhava, the witness state. Gurudev helps us cultivate this effortlessly through meditation and mindfulness. He says, you are not just your thoughts, not your emotions, not even your body. You are the light in which all these appear. Living from this realization transforms stress into serenity, work into worship, and relationships into seva. Even amidst challenges, one feels anchored and unshaken because the identification has shifted from the transient to the eternal. This is the true purpose of spiritual knowledge, not escape from life, but mastery within it. Now, Gurudev says the subtle body carries karma. How does meditation help dissolve it? The karma is a law of cause and effect that governs actions in the subtle field. Every thought, word, and deed creates an impression. These impressions bind us until they are experienced or dissolved through awareness. Gurudev explains that meditation burns karma like fire burns cotton. In deep meditation, the mind transcends activity and enters the stillness of the causal body, where karma has no access. The intensity of awareness during such silence dissolves latent impressions without the need for external experience. Gurudev often says awareness is a fire, the fire that purifies through regular meditation. We no longer identify with our karmic baggage, we observe it. This shift from doer to witness frees us from the compulsions of the past. The more we meditate, the lighter we become. Actions flow from intuition and compassion rather than conditioning. This is how inner freedom manifests step by step. How does Gurdev describe the relationship between individual consciousness and universal consciousness? Jayadeva Gurudev says the difference between individual consciousness of the Jivatma and universal consciousness of the Paramatma is like the difference between a wave and the ocean. The wave has form, name, and motion, yet it is nothing other than the ocean itself. When the wave forgets its nature, it feels limited. When it remembers, it realizes it was never separate. Similarly, the individual is the same as the infinite one, veiled, only veiled by ignorance and ego. The Upanishads echo this Tattvamasi Yuva that Gurudev's teachings make this truth experiential through meditation. When the mind becomes silent, individuality dissolves into universality. One experiences the same consciousness that sustains the stars, the rivers, and the galaxies. This realization is not intellectual but direct. Gurudev often says the drop is in the ocean and the ocean is in the drop. When this understanding dawns, fear, desire, and loneliness vanish. One start living with ease, joy, and service, knowing that all life is a reflection of the same infinite being. Now, what role does prana or the life force play in connecting body, mind, and spirit? In the Vedic framework, prana is the bridge that connects the gross body with the subtle and the causal layers. It is the vital energy that animates the body, governs emotions, and links the physical with the consciousness. Gurudev often calls the prana the electricity that runs both the universe and you. Gurudev explains that disturbances in prana flow manifest as stress or disease. Pranayama and Sudarshan Kriya restore its balance, harmonizing the physical, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. When prana flows freely, thoughts settle, intuition sharpens, and one feels connected with the life at a deeper level. Gurudev says, when prana is high and steady, the mind is unshaken. That's why breath based practices are central in art of living. They refine the subtle body and prepare it for meditation. In Vedic understanding, when prana merges with the cosmic prana at the time of samadhi, individuality dissolves and the seeker realizes oneness with the universe. Now, Gurudev often says the universe is not outside you. How can this be understood in daily experience? Gurudev invites us to look inward to realize that everything we perceive outside has its roots within. The same elements, energies, and intelligence that shape the cosmos operate in our own body and mind. When you close your eyes in meditation, you find galaxies of thoughts, constellations of emotions, and vast skies of silence within. The Mandukya Upanishad calls this realization the Pinda Brahmanda Nyaya, the principle that the microcosm or the individual reflects the macrocosm or the universe. Gurudev translates this into practice by encouraging us to observe the rhythm of nature within ourselves: breath versus wind, heat versus fire, water as emotion, solidify and solidity as earth, and the mind as space. Once this understanding matures, we stop fighting with the external world. Compassion replaces judgment because we see everything as extensions of ourselves. This is the essence of spirituality, not running from the world, but seeing the world as yourself. Now, how does understanding of the 36 elements deepen one's meditation practice? The 36 elements of the tattvas describe the journey from the unmanifest to the manifest, from consciousness to matter. When a seeker meditates with awareness of these tattvas, the process reverses. The mind withdraws from the cross back to the subtle, from activity back to the source. It becomes a conscious inward pilgrimage. Now, Gurudev simplifies this ancient wisdom beautifully. He says, when you meditate, your awareness moves from the body or the earth to the breath or the air, from the breath to the mind or the sky, from mind to the intellect or the light, and from there to the space of consciousness or Hima. This gradual inward expansion aligns perfectly with the structure of 36 tattvas. Understanding this hierarchy helps one not to struggle in meditation. It's not about effort, but about relaxing through these layers. When we surrender completely, we reach the 36th element, the pure consciousness, the Shiva Tattva, and taste the stillness that Gurudev calls the source of all joy. Now, what does Gurudev mean when he says the subtle body is the bridge between worlds? The subtle body functions as a connector between physical existence and the realm of spirit. Gurudev says it is through the subtle body that we dream, remember, and feel intuition. It carries the impressions from one life to another, functioning as a vehicle of consciousness beyond physical death. In Vedic Dharma, this is described as Antakarana, an instrument, the inner instrument made of mind or manas, and the intellect or buddhi, and memory or chitta, and ego or ahankara. The subtle body allows communication between the higher and lower worlds. It is through this that yogis perceive divine knowledge or experience cosmic vibrations. Gurudev often says that during deep meditation, when prana withdraws from the senses, we travel inward to this bridge, touching subtler realms of awareness. Therefore, refining the subtle body through sadhana is essential, for it becomes a luminous path through which one experiences the infinite. Now, how does Gurudev explain the dissolution of the gross body into the universe after death? Gurudev beautifully aligns spiritual philosophy with the natural law. He explains that when death occurs, the physical body simply returns to its elemental source. The earth element merges back into soil, water into rivers, fire into heat, and air into wind, and space back into the cosmic field. Nothing truly dies, it only transforms. This reflects the Bhuta Shuddhi principle, purification and recycling of the elements. Gurudev says the body belongs to the earth, it was never yours. When we understand the sphere of the dissolves, we see life as a continuum, not an ending but a transition. What continues is a subtle energy carrying impressions to another form until realization dawns. Awareness of this eternal cycle brings deep peace. Gurudev often reminds us that liberation or moksha is realizing our eternal nature now, even while living, knowing that we are that consciousness which neither comes nor goes. Now, what is the significance of sky or Akasha among the five elements in Gurudev's explanation? The Gurudev places great emphasis on Akasha or space because it is the subtlest of the five elements and the foundation for all others. He says everything exists in space, your thoughts, sounds, and emotions, yet space remains untouched. This quality mirrors consciousness itself. In Vedic cosmology, Akash Tattva represents both the physical space and the spiritual expanse, the field where all phenomena arise and dissolve. Gurudev connects this to meditation. As we expand our awareness, we experience more inner space, the clutter of thoughts reduces, and the mind feels vast like the sky. Just as clouds cannot stain the sky, experiences cannot taint consciousness. Gurudev encourages seekers to rest in this awareness, to be like the sky, accommodating yet unaffected. When the sky element within us is balanced, we feel freedom, creativity, and a deep sense of belonging to the universe. Now, how do the senses relate to the elements according to Gurudev's teaching? Gurudev explains that each sense is linked to a specific element: smell to earth, taste to water, sight to fire, and touch to air, and hearing to space. This connection reveals how intricately our sensory experiences woven into the fabric of creation. The body is not separate from nature, but it's a living reflection. Gurudev often guides seekers to become aware of their senses without getting lost in them. When you observe a fragrance, don't just enjoy it, realize it is the play of the earth element. When you taste, see it as a flow of water within consciousness. This awareness turns ordinary perception into meditation. The Vedic Dharma tradition also teaches pratyahara, withdrawing the senses inward, which Gurudev makes accessible through guided meditations. When the senses are directed inward, energy is conserved and the mind becomes still. That stillness allows the subtle and causal bodies to shine in their natural brilliance. Now, what's practical steps does Gurudev recommend for aligning with the universe? Jagadav Gurudev simplifies the vast spiritual sciences into five pillars: sadhana or the practice, the seva or the selfless service, satsang is the company of truth, and swadhyaya is the self study and silence. These align the individual's rhythm with the cosmic rhythm. Sadhana purifies the body and mind, seva expands the heart, satsang uplifts energy, and swadhyaya deepens knowledge, and silence connects one to the causal. From a Vedic standpoint, these five are reflections of the cosmic order or the Rita. Gurudev emphasizes that spirituality is not withdrawal but synchronization, living in tune with nature's intelligence. He says, when your rhythm is in harmony with the universe, every thought becomes divine will. This alignment brings grace into action, efficiency without effort, and joy without reason, whether through daily kriya, chanting mantras, or simply observing the breath. Every practice becomes a way of merging with the infinite. That is the essence of you and the universe. Now, can you explain the significance of the 36 element, the Him or the Hima or the Shiv Tattva mentioned by Gurudev in his talk? Gurudev beautifully explained that the 36 element Hima signifies the infinite field of consciousness that pervades all the previous 35 elements. It's not a physical element like earth, water, or air, but the substratum, the silent witness behind creation. In Sanskrit, Hima symbolizes purity, coolness, and vastness like the Himalayas. Gurudev says that when one realizes this 36 element within, they transcend the boundaries of individuality and merge with universal existence. In Vedic philosophy, this final element corresponds to Param Tattva, the ultimate principle or Brahman, while the first 35 describe the unmanifested layers of existence. Hima is the unmanifested pure awareness. Through deep meditation, we access this level where the knower, the known, and knowing become one. It is where karma dissolves and liberation dawns. Now, how does Gurudev connect the idea of the three bodies, the gross, subtle, and causal, with the 36 elements? Gurudev linked them beautifully. The gross body or the Sthul Sharira operates through the first five elements: the earth, water, fire, air, and space. The subtle body or the Sukshma Sharira contains mind, intellect, ego, and the sense organs, which arise from subtler elements. The causal body or the Karan Sharira is rooted in the 36th element, the infinite field of consciousness. It is untouched, pure, and unchanging. Indeed, the 36 elements map the journey of the soul from the dense to the subtle, from the limited to the boundless. The causal body is the seat of all experiences, the source of existence, and the doorway to liberation. Gurudev reminds us that realizing this structure helps us understand that not only who we are, but also the divine blueprint of the universe. Now, what is the role of karma in the transition between these bodies? Gurudev emphasized that karma does not attach to the gross body, it perishes with death, but the subtle body carries impressions or samskaras that drive the next birth. The causal body remains unaffected, like the sky untouched by clouds. Meditation, seva, and wisdom burn karmic seeds, freeing us from their hold. This understanding aligns perfectly with the Garuda Purana and Vriddhakanya Upanishad. This describes how the subtle body, guided by karma and desire, seeks a new form until realization breaks the cycle. Gurudev reminded that by knowing the knower, karma loses its grip and freedom becomes natural. Now, how does this teaching influence our perspective on death and rebirth? Gurudev made death appear not as an end but as a continuation of the cosmic journey. When the gross body dissolves, the subtle body moves forward, carrying impressions. The causal body remains pure and untouched. Meditation allows us to experience a subtle transition consciously. In Vedic rituals, especially the Antyeshti or the final rites, mantras acknowledge this passage of the subtle body. Understanding it reduces fear and deepens reverence for life. Gurudev says when one realizes that they are not the body but the consciousness behind it, the mystery of death transforms into awe and serenity. Now, how can a seeker practically experience the subtle and causal bodies? Directly through Gurudev's guided meditation, Sudarshan Kriya, and Sahat Samadhi meditation, seekers shift attention from the body to breath, from breath to mind, and from mind to pure awareness. These practices awaken sensitivity to subtle vibrations. The Upanishads call this Pratyagatma Darshanam, the seeing the inner self. Through devotion, mantra chanting, and silence, one moves inward. The causal body reveals itself as stillness beyond thought. Gurdjieff's genius lies in making these ancient experiences accessible to modern minds. Now, what does it mean that the gross body is a projection of the subtle body? Nagadev Gurudev explained that our physical form is molded by subtle impressions, thoughts, emotions, and karmic patterns. The body is an expression of the unseen. Healing begins when we purify the subtle. Then Ayurveda and yoga affirm the same. Disease begins in the mind and manifests in the body. By refining the subtle body through pranayama and meditation, harmony returns to the gross body. Gurudev's teachings integrate these insights seamlessly, showing how spiritual and physical wellness are one continuum. Now, why does Gurudev call the causal body untouched and pure? Jagadev, because it is the realm of pure consciousness. No thought, no desire, no karma can stain it. It is eternal beyond time and change. The causal body is identical to Atman. It's the reason saints radiate peace even in chaos. They rest in that purity. Gurudev said that once you glimpse it, life becomes play, not struggle. How does understanding these bodies affect our spiritual growth? It gives perspective. We stop over identifying with the body and emotions, we become witness. Then real growth happens effortless and natural. Knowledge of the three bodies bridges science and spirituality. It explains why sadhana or the practice and seva or selfless service in satsang or truthful company transform us from gross to subtle, from ego to essence. Now, how did Gurudev connect this ancient wisdom with the modern science? Gurudev said that the universe is both energy and consciousness. Modern quantum physics speak of unified fields. Vedic seers call it Brahman. The 36 elements map this continuum. Science observes the external structure. Spirituality reveals the inner cause. Gurudev bridges the two, showing that energy, matter, and awareness are not separate. When seen as one, knowledge becomes wisdom. So, what is the essence of Gurudev's message in You and the Universe on day one? The essence is you are not separate from the universe. Every element from earth to consciousness is within you. To know yourself is to know the cosmos. Gurudev illuminated that realization is not escape from the world, but merging with its essence. When we live from that understanding with purity, compassion, and awareness, the divine orchestrates life effortlessly. That is true freedom, and that is the heart of this profound discourse. Jai Gurudev. Jagadish, Gurudev began by saying the soul travels just like a suitcase in an airplane journey. How do we understand this metaphor? Jagadish, this metaphor is profoundly simple yet cosmic in meaning. When Gurudev says the soul travels like a suitcase, he points to the continuity of consciousness beyond this physical lifetime. The suitcase holds impressions, memories, emotions, unfulfilled desires, virtues, and karmic patterns, just as a subtle body holds some scars. When a traveler moves from one city to another, the suitcase travels with him. Similarly, the soul journeys from one life to the next, carrying these subtle imprints. Death, therefore, is not an end but a transition, a layover between flights. The destination is determined by what is packed within. If we fill the suitcase with purity, compassion, and meditation, our onward journey becomes smooth and elevated. Gurudev reminds us that we are not this body but travelers in it through knowledge. and sadhana, we consciously choose what to carry forward. Hence, spirituality is the art of intelligent packing, letting go of heaviness, retaining only lightness. Now, Gurudev also mentioned that impressions of past lives influence the present. How does this manifest in our daily experiences? The impressions of vasanas and samskaras act as invisible undercurrents, guiding our responses, preferences, and emotional patterns. Gurudev explains that often we don't understand why we instantly like or dislike someone, or why certain fears arise without cause. These are echoes of past life tendencies. These impressions form the blueprint of our subconscious mind, shaping destiny until dissolved through awareness. Meditation, seva, and satsang cleanse these impressions, allowing a natural joy to shine. Gurudev often says, meditation is like a laundry for the soul. When we go within, the knots of memory loosen and clarity dawns in Vedic Dharma. This cleansing is known as vasanashaya, the diminishing of desires through knowledge. So, a task in this life is not to escape karma but to purify it through conscious living. Every act done with awareness lightens this subtle body, preparing it for higher planes of existence. Now, Gurudev spoke about the subtle body being like the dream state. How do these states of consciousness interrelate? Gurudev, there are three primary states: the Jagrat or the waking, the Swapna or the dream, and the Sushupti or the deep sleep. Gurudev beautifully aligns these with the gross, the subtle, and the causal bodies. In the waking state, logic and reasoning dominate the realm of the gross body. In dreams, logic fades and impressions play freely. This corresponds to the subtle body. In deep sleep, there is no mind, no thought, only pure rest. That is the causal body. When we meditate, we access all three levels consciously, Gurudev says. Meditation is a conscious deep sleep. The connection to the causal body refreshes and rejuvenates us, like how a device reconnects to its charging source. This is why a meditator wakes with a luminous mind, even with a little rest, because energy flows directly from the source. In Vedic science, this journey mirrors Om or itself, a waking, U or dream, and M or deep sleep, and the silent beyond the Turiya, the transcendental fourth. Meditation opens that doorway. So it's waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and Turiya. So Gurudev emphasized that deep sleep rejuvenates the mind because it connects to the causal body. So can you elaborate on that? Yes, Jagodev, in deep sleep, all sensory activities, thoughts, and emotions dissolve. The individual merges unknowingly with the universal field, the causal sheath, or the Karan Sharira. This is why, even after mental exhaustion, a few moments of deep sleep restore vitality. Gurudev often says, in deep sleep, you taste yourself unconsciously. In meditation, you do it consciously. The causal body is like the root of all existence, the source from which the subtle and the gross emerge. When the mind touches the depth, that depth it receives the prana, wisdom, and intuitive power. That is why in Sahat Samadhi meditation, practitioners experience both freshness and expansion. Vedic rishis observe that every night deep sleep is nature's reminder of our infinite nature. Yet meditation makes it living wisdom where you can carry that serenity even with the open eyes. Now, Gurudev mentioned you have the discretion to fill your subtle body with positive aspects. How can one practically do this? Through choice, awareness, and disciplined practice, Gurudev's teachings align with Vedic Dharma in asserting that every thought, word, and action leaves a vibration in the subtle field. By choosing compassion over anger, gratitude over greed, we imprint purity into our subtle system. The five paths of seva or selfless service, satsang or the company of truth, and swadhyaya or study, and sadhana or practice, and shraddha or faith are the daily tools to fill our subtle body with light. Practically, it means mindfulness in speech, forgiveness in heart, and a smile even amidst the challenges. When Gurudev asks us to meditate twice daily, he is asking us to refresh our subtle instrument. Just as we bathe our body, what we hold within radiates outward. A cleansed subtle body attracts harmony, health, and abundance. The self effort guided by divine grace creates a magnetic aura that not only transforms the self but uplifts everyone nearby. Now, Gurudev often says that karma is not punishment but learning. How does that relate to the subtle body and reincarnation? Gurudev's perspective redefines karma beautifully. He explains that karma is like an intelligent feedback system of the universe. It teaches, not punishes. Every action leaves an impression in the subtle body, and these impressions manifest as experiences in future lifetimes. When we understand this, suffering no longer feels cruel, it becomes a doorway to awareness. The subtle body carries karmic seeds, but wisdom, meditation, and service can burn them before they sprout. Renunciation is the continuation of this learning cycle. Gurudev says the body changes, but the story continues. Like upgrading to a new device, the data or impressions transfer until realization happens. Through spiritual practices, we clear this data, freeing the soul from repetition. Thus, karma becomes an instrument of evolution. The more we act selflessly and consciously, the lighter our subtle body becomes. Eventually, when there are no residues left to balance, liberation or moksha naturally dawns. Now, how does a meditation help dissolve these karmic impressions? Yeah, the meditation is the most direct means of purifying the subtle body. Gurudev often likens it to sunlight that melts frozen emotions and hidden patterns. When one sits in deep stillness, old impressions surface and dissolve effortlessly. The breath, being the bridge between body and mind, carries out this cleansing. In Sudarshan Kriya, rhythmic breathing unravels the knots of karma gently and systematically. Vedic scriptures describe meditation as manonasha, the dissolving of mind patterns. It's not destruction but transcendence. When one witnesses sensations, thoughts, and emotions without judgment, the stored impressions lose their grip. Gurudev's teaching of effortless meditation allows us to drop control and simply be. The result is freedom from cycles of craving and aversion. Thus, every sitting in meditation is a return journey from the periphery to the source. Over time, this cleansed subtle body becomes luminous, intuitive, and aligned with divine intelligence. Now, Gurudev mentioned that logic does not work in the dream state. Why is this significant for spiritual growth? The dreams reveal a deeper layer of our consciousness where logic loses its dominance and symbols speak. Gurudev explains that dreams are the playground of the subtle body where impressions find expression without physical consequence. Understanding that logic dissolves in the dream state reminds us that reality is layered. What appears illogical in one plane may be perfectly natural in another. This insight expands the perception beyond rigid nationality and rationality. In spirituality, logic is like a ladder. It helps you climb but must eventually be left behind. Meditation, devotion, and surrender take you further. Gurudev often says intuition begins where logic ends. By observing dreams and meditating, one learns to witness without attachment. The subconscious begins to reveal itself, integrating suppressed emotions and fears. The Vedas call this Swapna Avastha Jnana, the knowledge through dream awareness. Thus, even dreams, when understood through wisdom, becomes tools for liberation. Now, Gurudev spoke about doubt vanishing at the surface level of the mind. What does that signify? The doubt arises in the intellect when the connection to the self weakens. Gurudev says that the mind's surface, where thoughts constantly arise, is prone to restlessness and skepticism. But when awareness deepens through meditation, the turbulence settles and intuitive clarity emerges. In that silence, doubt cannot survive because experience replaces speculation. This is why Gurudev emphasizes Anubhava experience over mere belief. Once you have tasted peace, no one can make you doubt it. The surface mind questions, the depth knows. In Sanskrit, this is called Shraddha, a deep trust born from inner experience. In the path of yoga and dharma, doubt is not wrong. It is an opportunity to inquire sincerely. But once you touch the stillness within, faith naturally flowers. Gurudev beautifully puts it, when the mind is still, God is obvious. Thus, the journey is not to eliminate doubt forcefully, but to transcend it through direct awareness. Now, Gurudev says the subtle body determines our next birth. How does one consciously influence this process? Through self awareness and intentional living, every moment we are sculpting the quality of our next existence. Gurudev teaches that the subtle body records the vibrations of our thoughts and emotions. These decide the vibrational plane we will move on. By living with gratitude, meditation, and seva, we elevate that vibration. Vedic Dharma explains that this as Urdhagati, or the upward movement, and Adhagati, or the downward movement of consciousness. A mind soaked in compassion, devotion, and knowledge naturally ascends to higher realms. Gurudev reminds us that liberation isn't about escaping the world, it's about refinement while living in it. When the subtle body is light, filled with love and selflessness, it attracts divine planes or even dissolves entirely into the infinite. Hence, each day becomes a sacred opportunity to pack our suitcase wisely with joy, service, and surrender. Spiritual evolution is not accidental, it's the outcome of consistent and conscious living. Now, what happens when old impressions interfere with our present growth? Old impressions often act like fog on a mirror, they blur perception. Gurudev explains that when we feel stuck in repetitive patterns, emotional pain, fears, or addictions, it's the residue of unresolved samskaras surfacing. Instead of resisting them, he suggests embracing them with awareness. Through meditation, breath work, and grace, they get released. The Bhagavad Gita echoes this truth. Even a little practice of this dharma breaks from great fear. Each moment of awareness weakens the grip of the past. Gurudev also emphasizes satsang where collective vibrations help dissolve negativity faster. It's essential to remember that impressions are not permanent, they are impressions, not identity. With the patience and sadhana, they lose intensity. The Vedic understanding of Punarjanma or rebirth is not just about changing bodies, it's about renewing consciousness in every moment. When awareness is fresh, karma becomes wisdom and life becomes celebration. Now, can you equate the subtle body to the subconscious mind in modern psychology? Yes, but only partially. The subconscious mind is one dimension of the subtle body, dealing with stored memories and conditioned responses. The subtle body, however, extends beyond. It is the energetic, emotional, and psychic sheath that connects the individual to the cosmos. Gurudev bridges these worlds seamlessly. He says the human system is like an instrument with multiple frequencies. The subtle body operates on the frequency of intuition and energy. In Vedic terms, it comprises a pranayama kosha or the energy sheath and manomaya kosha or the mental sheath. Psychology observes behavior, spirituality transforms being. Through breath and awareness, we access it layers deeper than memory, entering realms where time and space collapse. Thus, while psychology explains patterns, meditation dissolves them. Gurudev has given the world tools like Sudarshan Kriya to bridge this ancient knowledge with modern understanding. The subtle body, therefore, is not just a concept, it's the living field through which consciousness experiences the universe. Now, Gurudev often says that dreams weaken you, deep sleep strengthens you. Why is that so? Jagadev, dreams are partial rest. Mental activity continues. Gurudev explains that in dreams, the subtle body expends a pranic energy, replaying impressions, often leaving us tired upon waking. Deep sleep, however, is total surrender. In that state, the mind dissolves into the causal body, absorbing nourishment directly from the source. This is why Gurudev insists that meditation is more rejuvenating than sleep. In meditation, you consciously enter that stillness, gaining energy without unconsciousness. Vedic Dharma describes deep sleep as Anandamaya Kosha's reflection, a state where bliss naturally shines. When we live a cluttered life filled with unfinished emotions, dreams dominate. But when we live with clarity, gratitude, and spiritual discipline, even our dreams become sattvic symbols of purity. The goal is not to suppress dreams, but to transcend them by resting in awareness. Deep sleep restores the body, but deep meditation awakens the soul. Now, Gurudev often says, you are not just in the universe is within you. How does this idea connect to the subtle body? Jagat, this is one of Gurudev's most profound declarations. The universe and the individual are reflections of the same consciousness. The subtle body acts as a bridge between the limited and the infinite. Just as a hologram contains the entire image within each fragment, the human being contains the entire cosmos within the subtle field. Vedic has described through the concept of Pinda Brahmanda Nyaya. The microcosm mirrors the macrocosm. When Gurudev guides us into meditation, he is actually reconnecting us to that universal field where boundaries vanish. Modern quantum physics echoes this energy and consciousness are non local, interconnected. The subtle body is the antenna that perceives this cosmic awareness and oneness. As our vibrations define through sadhana, we begin to feel nature's pulse, people's emotions, even distant energies. The realization dawns I am that the universe is not out there, it's vibrating through our very being. Now, Gurudev talks about awakening beyond the dream and sleep states. What is that fourth state or the turiya? Gurudev, the turiya means the fourth, a transcendental state beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Gurudev says it's the state of pure awareness where one witnesses all three without being entangled. It's the domain of the self untouched by pleasure or pain. In turiya, you are fully awake and fully at rest. The mind is silent, but awareness is vibrant. This is what advanced meditation cultivates. Vedic sages called it the Satchitananda, the existence, the consciousness of the bliss. Gurudev often reminds us that enlightenment is not somewhere else, it's this state becoming natural in daily life. When Turiya permeates waking consciousness, you live in freedom amidst activity. This is Jivan Mukti, liberation while alive. So while deep sleep connects you unconsciously to the source, Turiya connects you consciously. It's like knowing you are dreaming while dreaming, but with complete serenity. This is the highest purpose of all spiritual practice, to awaken to the self that never sleeps. Now, Gurudev mentioned that impressions can be pleasant or unpleasant. How do we consciously transform unpleasant impressions? The unpleasant impressions or asattvic samskaras are natural residues of past experiences, often causing fear, anger, or attachment. Gurudev emphasizes awareness for simply noticing these impressions without judgment weakens their hold. Meditation, especially Sudarshan Kriya, helps discharge the energy field tied to these impressions, turning them into neutral vibrations. The Vedic approach complements this. Chanting, mantra repetition, and puja purify both mind and subtle body. Gurudev reminds us that action must follow awareness, acts of kindness, selfless service, and forgiveness create new positive impressions that can override the old. Over time, the mind's tendency is to shift from reactive to responsive. Moreover, cultivating gratitude and equanimity strengthens the subtle body. Against recurring negative patterns, the key is consistent practice, not mere suppression. The universe responds to the quality of the subtle body, so when we nurture positivity, even old karmic patterns dissolve organically. In essence, we are alchemists transforming inner lead into gold, impressions into wisdom. Now, Gurudev spoke about the subtle body being subtle body and subtle energy. How do we perceive and work with it practically? The subtle body is the energetic framework underlying physical and mental phenomenon. When invisible, while invisible, its effects are tangible. Our moods, intuition, and vitality reflect its condition. Gurudev teaches tools like breath awareness, pranayama, and meditation to sense and regulate this energy. Sudarshan Kriya, for example, synchronizes body and mind vibrations directly impacting the subtle body. In daily life, mindfulness is crucial. Thoughts, speech, and actions leave energetic imprints. By observing intentions, choosing positivity, and performing seva, one actively strengthens the subtle body. The Vedic tradition adds mantras and rituals which act as energetic catalysts, aligning individual vibration with the cosmic resonance. Over time, practitioners report heightened intuition, improved health, and emotional stability. Clear signs that the subtle body is harmonized. Gurudev often says energy is the language of the subtle body. Learn it, and the universe converses with you. So, working with energy is less mystical than practical. Awareness, practice, and service are sufficient to attune one's subtle body to higher consciousness. Now, Gurudev often mentions that the subtle body stores both knowledge and ignorance. How do we prioritize learning over karmic baggage? Neither the subtle body functions as a dynamic ledger. It holds accumulated knowledge of Vidya and unresolved impressions of Vidya. Gurudev stresses that conscious choice, we cannot erase everything instantly, but we can increase the weight of wisdom relative to ignorance. Meditation, spiritual study, and satsang are like depositing gold into this ledger, gradually overshadowing the old debts. Vedic science suggests that jnana or knowledge stabilizes the subtle body, creating resilience against repeated karmic patterns. Even challenging experiences can be reframed as learning opportunities. Gurudev's teachings emphasize experiential knowledge over rote learning. What is internalized through sadhana and awareness strengthens the subtle body more than intellectual comprehension alone. Ultimately, prioritizing learning is a continuous process. Each mindful action, act of compassion, or moment of reflection is a conscious deposit in the subtle body's treasury. Over lifetimes, the balance steps toward clarity, peace, and insight, allowing the soul to move unhindered toward liberation. Now, how do impressions weaken the logic of the waking mind, as Gurudev described? Neither impressions function like hidden programming. While we like to believe our waking mind is fully rational, Gurudev teaches that many decisions are driven unconsciously by past experiences, and unresolved fear, a suppressed emotion, or habit may dictate responses before reason engages. This is similar to a computer running background processes. Our conscious mind thinks it's in control, but subtle patterns are influencing behavior. Dreams reveal this programming more explicitly as logic is suspended. In waking life, meditation makes the mind aware of these hidden currents. By observing thought patterns, and emotional reactions, one begins to identify the subtle triggers behind decisions. Vedic techniques like mantra and meditation rewire these patterns, strengthening discernment and logical clarity. Thus, logic is not absent, it is overshadowed by stored impressions. Gurudev's wisdom shows that liberation of the mind comes not from forceful logic, but from dissolving impressions that cloud judgment. A clear, subtle body leads to a coherent, harmonious, and logically aligned waking mind. Now, Gurudev emphasized awareness of the present as key to subtle body cleansing. How does this presence help? Now, the presence is the bridge between gross and subtle experiences. Gurudev reminds us that impressions operate unconsciously, replaying automatically. Awareness interrupts the flow. When fully present, we witness reactions before they dominate, choosing responses over reflex. In practical terms, presence strengthens the subtle body by converting energy from unconscious patterns into conscious action. Breath awareness, mantra repetition, and mindful observation anchor us in the moment. The Vedic principle of dharana, which is focused attention, achieves the same effect. Even mundane tasks performed with attention generate positive vibrations. Presence also aligns us with universal rhythm. Gurudev often says, when you are fully in the now, the universe collaborates with you. This alignment allows karmic residues to dissolve as energy flows freely, unblocked by old impressions. Over time, a subtle body refined by presence becomes intuitive, resilient, and luminous, capable of harmonizing internal and external worlds. Now, Gurudev mentions packing positivity in the subtle body for the next lifetime. Can you elaborate on this metaphor? Jayadeva, the metaphor of packing positivity is vivid. Just as travelers choose essentials for a journey, we decide which qualities to carry forward. Positive actions, meditations, self service, and virtuous thoughts fill the subtle body with light, while anger, greed, and resentment act as unnecessary baggage. Vedic Dharma teaches that subtle vibrations influence future circumstances. By consciously cultivating sattvic energy, we create a gravitational pull toward harmonious experiences. Gurudev says the soul carries your choices like luggage, pack wisely. This is not passive, it requires consistent self effort. Every moment presents opportunities to replace negativity with wisdom, strengthening the subtle body for elevated living. Over lifetimes, accumulated positivity eases the soul's journey, creating continuity of joy, clarity, and spiritual evolution. Now, how does the deep sleep compare with meditation in terms of subtle body rejuvenation? Now, the deep sleep is involuntary connection to the causal body, nature's mechanism for rest and rejuvenation. Meditation, however, is voluntary. Gurudev emphasizes that in meditation, one enters deep restful states consciously. In deep sleep, energy is absorbed without awareness. Meditation allows one to replenish, cleanse, and align subtle energies with purpose. The subtle body becomes not only refreshed, but also attuned to higher consciousness. Vedic practices such as mantra or sadhana amplify this effect. The practitioner doesn't just rest, they upgrade the quality of subtle vibrations. Gurudev often notes that even short periods of meditation can be more rejuvenating than long sleep because conscious alignment addresses, accesses causal energy directly, bypassing distractions of unconscious processes. Now, Gurudev explained that impressions can weaken us. Can positive impressions strengthen resilience? They have absolutely positive impressions like sattvic samskaras act as reserves of energy and wisdom in the subtle body. Meditation, mantra, gratitude, and compassion actions deposit positive vibrations that counterbalance karmic residues. These impressions function like muscle memory for the soul. When challenges arise, the subtle body responds with composure, clarity, and intuition. Gurudev emphasizes that life's stress becomes manageable because the subtle body is primed with strength and harmony. The Vedic Dharma aligns with this. Rituals, chants, and service reinforces positivity energetically. Over time, the subtle body becomes a repository of resilience, joy, and spiritual insight, making liberation an organic process. How does the dream state influence the subtle body or subtle body according to Gurudev? The dreams are a projection of the subtle body, impressions stored within manifest freely during sleep. Positive experiences create uplifting dreams, while unresolved conflicts may surface as stress or nightmares. Gurudev points out that in dream, logic is suspended, subtle entities operate uninhibited, revealing inner patterns. By observing dreams or practicing meditation before sleep, one can guide the subtle body toward harmony. Vedic text describes Swapna Yoga techniques to purify impressions during dreams, strengthening the subtle body. Thus, dreams are not trivial, they reflect our inner world and provide opportunities for subtle learning and energy refinement. Now, Gurudev mentions that doubts vanish in deep meditation. Why is this important? There, the doubt arises from surface level thought patterns shaped by past impressions and sensory distractions. Gurudev teaches that meditation penetrates deeper layers of consciousness where certainty resides. When one directly experiences inner stillness, doubt loses its foundation. This is crucial because indecision and insecurity perpetuate karmic cycles. When a purified subtle body, actions arise from clarity rather than fear or confusion. The Vedic tradition calls this Shraddha, faith born from experiential knowledge rather than blind belief. Meditation thus acts as both purifier and illuminator. As impressions dissolve, doubt cannot survive. The mind aligns with the cosmic intelligence. The subtle body becomes receptive, resilient, and clear, allowing conscious living aligned with the dharmic principles and universal harmony. Now, Gurudev emphasizes that the subtle body stores impressions like a suitcase. Can negative impressions be removed completely? Yes, but it requires consistent practice and self awareness. Gurudev teaches that impressions are not permanent fixtures, they are like stains on a cloth that can be washed. Meditation, breath work, Sudarshan Kriya, Pranayama, Bhastrika, three stage pranayama, and selfless action act as detergents, dissolving these subtle residues. In Vedic terms, this is a Vasana Shaya, the weakening of latent impressions. Sudarshan Kriya, guided meditation, Sat Samadhi meditation, and chanting not only cleanse negative energy but also replace it with positive vibrations. The process is gradual. Some impressions dissolve immediately, others require repeated effort across days, months, or even lifetimes. Gurudev emphasizes that conscious awareness is the key and unconscious suppression won't work. Over time, the subtle body becomes lighter, more transparent, and aligned with higher consciousness. Emotional reactivity diminishes, clarity increases, and intuition strengthens. Negative impressions are not obstacles but opportunities for transformation. In essence, the soul unpacks intelligently, discarding what no longer serves and retaining wisdom, purity, and harmony.